Right, ladies and gentlemen, it is 10 after 1 and we are live. So, hopefully you're following. If not, you can always be reading this later on. All indications are broadcast is working. Before we start, it's very, very important because we do want to check in with you this week to understand your situations, understand your concerns, understand where you're at, and help you prepare for beta. That you do add your studio teaching team to your Google folder immediately. And we're just highlighting, we have a couple, there's actually a third individual. We have Ryan S. Williams, who was one of our design folks. We have Ryan Sosna, and we have Richard Welsh. So we actually have an RW, an RSW, and an RS. So I believe Ryan S. Williams is working with Antonia. Ryan Sosna is working with Kenny. So we do want to make sure that you add the right person, right member of the teaching team to your Google folder. So do double check that. And the reason we need you to add them is because they can't call you unless you do so. So the idea is that there needs to be a connection the way Google Hangouts works, and we've been learning this. There needs to be sort of an initial connect. It could be a chat, could be the Google folder, and then you're able to work through the call. So please do that as soon as you can. Studio's not till 3 today, but try to keep that rolling. So onwards. And we do want to get your Google emails because by sharing with us, it gives us the proper emails, which then enable us to add you and to contact you. So we wanted to avoid cut and paste issues by having you just add us and then we'll add you. So it is lecture 28. This announcement went out. We're going to stop doubling up with announcements now because it looks like Quirkus is now caught up with the email. So we're not going to double up on discourse unless Quirkus breaks again. So hopefully you're watching me. We're now in 720p 30 by suggestion to keep bandwidth down. And please let us know how that's working. We're going to be sending out a survey, hopefully tonight, to start asking questions around bandwidth, time zone differences, and so on, because we want to make sure that we can accommodate as best we can. There's Discord, and there's also Mattermost. And as we move forward, so one of the concerns that some people had, and in fact, the IT service for engineering contacted me last night saying, what are you doing? You're forcing students to give away personally identifying information. And they said, we don't want that. Turns out you can use Discord simply as a click the link chat client as opposed to needing an account. So if you have created an account, whether you had one before, whether it's a new account, it's really, really, really important that you use a different password than your UTOR ID. So what the engineering IT security people were telling me is that the majority of compromised University of Toronto accounts happen when people reuse passwords. So really try, this is just generally good internet, sort of not hygiene, internet action is shift passwords around, don't even shift them, don't reuse them. New passwords all around. So with that, we did create a screencast, and I will totally own the fact that this screencast is fairly large, 148 megs. So I'm going to work on sizing it. And it's just a little discussion of how to access Discord without an account. So one of the things we're going to be working on as we move forward is accessibility, to make sure that those of you who are more visual, more auditory, and more textual are all able to get the information we have. So a couple points. Why Discord? It does support some features. We may be able to get voice working today. That's one of my goals. And because a number of you are on it. So it's a chat service that does audio, can do video, that a number of you are on. But Mattermost is our preferred, and it's because it is compliant with the Freedom of Information and Personal Privacy Act. So it's a little less familiar and missing some features, but it does have the polling we're going to use. So we're going to try to move you to Mattermost as best we can. But Discord is kind of there as an interim measure. So a question for you, and this is something that we're starting to realize. So I put this video on the course download site. I could have also posted it up on YouTube. And so the question that we have for you now is, if these were posted to YouTube, given whatever your location is, could you access it? And so what we're going to try, and I said we'd like to use Mattermost. I know that some of you have forgotten your usernames. We'll fix that this week. is we're going to just very, very quickly call an audible. We're going to run a quick poll and just do kind of a yes, no, just to get Mattermost in play and get you a little more interactive, because I don't like this push approach. So if these kinds of screencasts were posted to YouTube, could you access them? So we're going to quickly launch, this will take a moment, we're going to launch a survey on Mattermost just to see how this goes. So take your moment, head over to Mattermost. I'm going to pull up the poll. Could you access screencast? Can you access screencasts? Can you access screencasts on YouTube from your current or anticipated location? And we're just making it a yes, no. So apologies, we're just coding a little bit of an audible as we figure this one out. Get rid of that, make it anonymous, and poll is up. All right, so let's see if we can get Mattermost in polling. We want to do a lot more of this interactive stuff. People are coming in, thank you. We'll give you, say, another 20, 30 seconds as we go. 25 users so far. Still coming in. And again, I get Discord, Mattermost, and such, but we'll get there. No, I'm not polling versus emotes right now. I want to use something that's a little more under, one that I understand and that I can sort of figure out. So I'm going to move on. I'll come back to the poll in a few minutes, or probably less than a few minutes, but soon. A maybe option. Crap. Okay, I think I can do this. Add option. Uncertain. Adding. Uncertain has been added. Thank you, Cravat. All right. As people fill in their ability to access YouTube, and we're sitting at about 50 of the class out of nominal 285, 51. We are making choices. We're making them a little bit quickly. If you have any concerns about the ones we're making, just let us know, because you're stakeholders, co-designers in this. We want to make sure that you're appropriately consulted and we're making good decisions. So here's what we're doing right now. As you can already tell, specific questions on Mattermost, the ones where it's like you want to DM, so DM on Mattermost. Broader questions, Mattermost or Discord. Again, the teaching team is more focused on Mattermost, but we're willing to accept Discord as necessary. And as you've already seen, those of you who are on Twitch, I've set things to emotes only in slow mode. Theater mode is kind of great if you don't even want to see the chat, you just want to see me. That's what worked for me when I tried it. As you know, I'm not usually a fan of being heavy-handed, but I also think it's really important to create a positive environment. All right, onwards. So this notion of co-designing, it can slow you down, right? Because if we're being very consultative, and as engineers, we're telling you, work with your stakeholders, engage with your stakeholders. So I'm going to try something. I hope it works. We're going to try to play a video over Twitch, which hopefully works. So here we go.
What we've learned in Ebola outbreaks is you need to react quickly. You need to go after the virus. You need to stop the chains of transmission. You need to engage with communities very deeply. Community acceptance is hugely important. You need to be coordinated. You need to be coherent. You need to look at the other sectoral impacts, the schools and security and economic. So it's essentially many of those same lessons, but the lessons I've learned after so many Ebola outbreaks in my career are: be fast, have no regrets. You must be the first mover. The virus will always get you if you don't move quickly. And you need to be prepared. And I say this, one of the great things in emergency response, and anyone who's involved in emergency response will know this, if you need to be right before you move, you will never win. Perfection is the enemy of the good when it comes to emergency management. Speed trumps perfection. And the problem in society we have at the moment is everyone is afraid of making a mistake. Everyone is afraid of the consequence of error. But the greatest error is not to move. The greatest error is to be paralyzed by the fear of failure. And I think that's the single biggest lesson I've learned in Ebola responses in the past.
All right, so a couple things. One, this is in the context of the current coronavirus. Two, this is a gentleman who's worked on Ebola, so one of the more serious of the viral infections over the years, and this is the World Health Organization. So, two things that I just heard there. One is if you need to be right before you move, then you'll never win. And this notion of certainty, this notion of you've got to target correctly. The term "win" in this context, I think it makes sense. They're trying to do viral containment. And the other thing I heard was that perfection is the enemy of the good. And that particular phrasing is one that doesn't just exist in disaster management, disaster mitigation. It also exists in Silicon Valley. And there's a huge debate, which some of you can look up if you're interested, between what's called the California approach and the New York approach. California developers are go, go, go. New York is do it right, do it right, do it right. New York seems to dominate banking, and California seems to dominate tech. So I'm going to put this out for however you want to discuss it. This notion of you need to be right before you, or if you need to be right, then you'll never win. And this notion that perfection is the enemy of the good. Just take a minute for yourself and say, like, okay, like, how much do you really buy into this? And I totally accept that there are contextual factors. If you're trying to prevent an imminent act, an imminent disaster, sure. But start to ask yourself, one, where do you kind of fall between the do it right or don't do it, and the just do something, anything. And what are you using to make that decision? So I'm going to, as we do a little bit of checking on PDFs, I'm going to leave it to you. Take about 2 minutes, chat amongst yourselves, whatever medium, Mattermost, Discord, and I'll be right there with you as we look up the PDFs. And as I say, I'm just going to check with my teaching team members on PDFs. Okay, we have a handout version that's been posted. All right, so again, not sure quite, this is what we're trying to figure out, is how we're going to bring things back into what we're doing, into our discussion. But I know that for me, so I'll talk about me, it depends largely on who I think I'm going to affect. And as an engineer, that's critical. I have stakeholders. If my stakeholder set is relatively small, then, maybe I'm willing to make higher risks with less certainty. But if I'm dealing with a class like yourselves of 285, that's a lot of people I'm going to impact. I want to do it as right as I can. I'm going to come back to that. All right, very quickly, we have about 59 responses on the poll. Survey says about 50, so about 5, 6 are saying yes, uncertain for about 7, no for 2. A little worried about the numbers. There should be a lot more of you there, but that's okay. It's a week of movement. It's a week of travel. It's a week of change. So what we're probably going to do then is certainly post things to the download site, which we can host. And we'll also start to look at streaming sites that we can also use for bandwidth purposes and just to make life a little bit easier for you. All right. Let's move on a little bit. So in terms of contextual factors, mine very much was how many other people are going to be impacted. Pareto curve with correctness, Benjamin Agro, I like it. Constant effort, and then you sort of play it with gaining utility. Oh, that's awesome. Big context, information available. If you don't have the information, what do you do? And I think some of you are experiencing that with respect to the stakeholders that are now much more challenging to access. Muffin Man. Perfection contributes to reiterative design and higher quality. It's not the enemy of the good. And then I think that's an interesting way, like the way it's set, perfection is the enemy of the good, says those are your only choices. And I think that Pareto curve and this notion of, in a sense, can you track and follow which of my next moves is most likely to, okay, this one's a little tricky. I'm going to see if I'm going to try to annotate, because this is an interesting point. So I don't think we've talked about this yet, this term. And hopefully I've got some room here. I'm going to be up in the corner. There's kind of two philosophical approaches. Professor Sheridan, can I ask you to put a poll up on this one, please? Again, we're going to ask the members of the class who are willing to share. Are you more maximize opportunity people or minimize regret people? I'll get rid of the word people. So let's create an artificial dichotomy, and I accept artificial dichotomy. Maximizing opportunity. You're going to make the move that, to the best of your knowledge, is going to have the highest potential payoff. Or are you more a minimize regret? I'm going to take whatever move is least likely to cause problem. So let's see if we can quickly throw up a quick poll on this, because I think there's some value to this one as well. So looking for Professor Sheridan. Is she in a position to set this up? One sec. Professor Sheridan will set this up. But again, depends if, and Chase, your point is awesome. If you'd like to then enhance and say, what are the things that for you change it? Does your David, same point, does your answer have to be an absolute? No. And this is why we really, there we go, pulls up. Thank you, Professor Sheridan. To whoever mom is, point taken on the gambling habits. I actually personally don't understand gambling, because I'm like, the math tells me I'm going to lose. Why would I do something the math tells me I will lose? All right, 31 people in. Cravat. Sounds like you're saying something along the lines of the best the best defense is a good offense. Now, of course, I played defense when I played soccer, and the best offense is a good defense. And I also believe in rugby as well. Rugby, where you just absorb pressure and then counterattack like no one's business. All right, 52 players in. Or I should say response. 53, 54, we're getting more. All right, where are the rest of your classmates? Agreed, Chase. In a sense, I weigh the risk versus reward. The challenge is in the absence of information when you're having to make assumptions. Check lecture participation on Discord, read bandwidth requirements. After lecture, okay. Thanks for putting the after lecture in, I was panicking. Okay, let's go. Professor Sheridan, can you please close the poll? $59, we're gonna make it to 60, good. All right, we made 60, awesome. All right. So as that poll finishes, this notion of move fast and break things has been written. Poll is done. Oh, that's awesome. All right. So I will now, again, in response to a 33-28 split, make the comment that this is another one of those elements where on your team, these are huge things. Because if some members of your team are very much about, I want to maximize opportunity, let's take risks and see where it goes, and some are more about minimizing regret, that's going to cause some of those teamwork tensions that some of you have already experienced. And so having that discussion about what do you mean by risk? What do you mean by opportunity? How could I better understand what you're doing? How can I better see the information or understand which information would help you make your decision is super valuable. So again, um, got sidetracked for a moment as we're getting some texting. Personally, it's about the other people. If you're going to break things that then cause people to lose their savings, like Robinhood that went down over the last couple of weeks, that's not good. So here's what we're going to say, and we've sort of said this already. In Praxis 2 and as an engineering designer, you're going to have to move. You can't just stay stagnant. You're going to have to move and have the risk of breaking. And so what you're going to want to do is make reasonable assumptions that allow your frame diverge, converge, represent cycle to progress. So what we're suggesting to you is don't assume unobtainium. Don't assume that you can get something that just isn't feasible, that you can bring costs down an order of magnitude unless you really can justify it, claim justification. So your assumptions themselves are claims with some degree of justification. But progress, get through the cycle, come back around, climb the Pareto curves, and definitely check your biases. On behalf of Professor Sheridan, because we're still working on multi-person presentations, it is the 17th, 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 17th. It is the 17th. It is St. Patrick's Day, which is kind of, a big thing depending on your background. I think the most important thing is that he is the patron saint of engineers, which is kind of cool because as a profession, we have a patron saint. I believe doctors do. I'm not sure about lawyers. So if you have a moment this evening to do a little bit of celebration with your patron or on behalf of or in honor of your patron saint, please do so. However, we're still in the modern world of social distancing, so virtual partying and non-destructive acts of greenification would probably be preferred, but do definitely try to get out there and do a little bit of celebrating. Okay. Hope that worked. We're going to talk about Stuart Pugh because a number of you have been using the term Pugh chart over and over again. I'm not sure you have necessarily taken a deep look at that. We're also going to talk a little bit about decision models and models in general, and a few of the subtopics. We might get to our Python pairwise comparison that seems to be the topic that keeps lingering. So fundamentally, I want to start this discussion with another dichotomy. It's a day of dichotomies because, as you already can tell in Praxis, we present a dichotomy and then ask you to dynamically shift within it. So I'm going to put this dichotomy out there as the notion of use as intended or use as desired. And in a very simple way, for example, this spoon is intended to be used, in a certain way. I have used this spoon as a pry bar, as a screwdriver, as a musical instrument. So this use intended, use desired happens all the time. But as you go from simple things like spoons into more complicated things like programming languages and frameworks or engineering design artifacts, things get messy. So by use as intended, it's the sense of, hey, look, the designer said this, they built it, they designed it, I should use it their way. Use as desired is, look, they've set it free. This is now my spoon. If I want to use this spoon for alternative purposes, that's my choice because it's my spoon. So again, we're gonna do a dichotomous, and again, we're not going to be able to probably pick up on some of the factors that will affect where you fall. but we'll get Professor Sheridan to set up another quick poll. So acknowledging contextual factors, where would you generally sit yourself between uses intended and uses desired? And again, I'll be a little more careful not to sort of pick on particular people's names, but I will sort of start to cite some of the things I see. So Professor Sheridan, if you could set up uses intended, uses desired, here we go. And yes, it depends again. The critical thing to take away from all of these dichotomies is reflection on which factors really make the difference. So I think we'll have a survey up in a moment. Survey's up. If the person who mentioned the id versus superego or made that comment could add some clarification, that'd be awesome, because I hadn't thought about that. All right, take a moment. I'll just put this out there. Please, class, never change. Are we using the poll as intended or desired? Like, you guys are awesome. Ooh, okay. The clarification on intended, desired, id, superego, kind of important. I like a nice explanation. Thank you. All right, let's call it. I believe we have, what do we got? Yeah, 57. Professor Sheridan, after you. I think the point on, there we go. So I would like to salute you as a class. We're looking at about 1/4, 43:15. I can do math. 1/4, 3/4, 1/4 on intended, 3/4 on desired. You have entered nominally a profession that is very much about doing things as intended and the way that the spec says versus, you know. So there may be some tension that may arise between your professional path and your personal desires, acknowledging before the comment is made that yes, but in a work context versus in a professional context versus a personal context, we didn't specify. And we're not going to get into this right now, but if most of your users, let's say that as a class, you're representative, and 75% of your users will do things the way they want to, does this mean that as an engineer, you're now responsible for designing things that are resistant to unintended use? Because now you're aware that your users are likely to work in that mode. Okay, here we go. The Pew chart, as per Google. Is it a quantitative technique? And I'm sitting here immediately going, is a plus and a minus and a zero really that quantitative? But let's just go with that. I mean, there's some questions there. Ranking the multi-dimensional options of an option set. How about to rank options along multiple dimensions? Okay, whoever wrote this has already got not happy. It is not weighted to allow a quick selection process, even though the image shows weights. And we have named after Stuart Pugh, head of design division at Strathclyde in Glasgow. The question is there because do we trust the head of design division at the University of Strathclyde? Does that individual have the ethos necessary for us to buy into their technique? And this is where the sort of the instinctual reaction is, well, he's just an academic. Why do we really trust academics, right? I'm not going to go into the ethos yet. Instead, I'm going to go a little bit further down and say, okay, so what do we get a little bit? Well, it said above, it is unweighted, and yet at the personal site of someone named Bobden in probably mechanical engineering 4th year, it says weigh each criterion, so thank you. Also, qualitative information are things using quality or the verbal description. We're just not even going to go here because this is kind of like, ugh. So what we're going to do is what we teach. Back to the source. The original paper by Stuart Pugh from 1981, found via interlibrary loan and bad photocopying. For what it's worth, I thought you might find this interesting. Um, Integration by parts was first published in 1715. Virtual work. So there's Professor Davis. So you can say that Professor Davis, has anything in your field advanced since 1715? And he'll say yes in fusion. Virtual work, Professor Collins was finalized in 1788. So we're coming up with foundational techniques in 1981. We're young. So let's do some highlighting. So most difficult problems in design is selection of best concept, fair enough. And you'll note the use of the term detailed design, suggesting, as we talked about fractals, you've got your conceptual, you've got your detail, and there you go. Apparently, the way that this technique was developed, so here's ethos, it's been tested and used effectively by graduate students, not industry, not professional practice, but post-grad students. So I'm a little worried already. So here's the goal. Here's what we're trying to get out of doing this. Greater insights, understanding, and knowledge. So it's interesting. The participants are going to require not seemingly an answer, but greater understanding with what's going on. Also, requirements, problem, solutions, FDCR, there's requirements is our F, and our potential solutions is our D, some interactions, and the notion of stronger or weaker. We can't say correct, we can't say right, but we can say, relatively speaking, stronger or weaker. What's missing from this set of objectives, I'm going to make this rhetorical, watching the clock a little bit, is there's no answer. There's no pick this one. So what the people using the technique are supposed to get out of this is not the answer. It's increased knowledge. All right, so why did this even come about? Why did Pugh bother with this? And this is where you end up with teamwork and leadership. As it says, strong-willed individuals whose initial concepts didn't get out there may start to become defensive. They may be like, but why mine should be there, and I'm willing to talk over you, I'm willing to bully you, I'm willing to make claims without justification because I very much want my design to be there. And so excuse me, voice is going. This technique exists in part to take away that ability to influence via power and take it into something that's a little more shared, a little more rational. And here's critical. Always be borne in mind, the choice of concept is with the participants. The matrix does not make the decisions. We're not getting you off the hook or letting you off the hook. It's not mathematical. So let's be blunt. The decisions remain with the user. And over the course of this term and last, you've heard me talk about, look, you can't just add up the numbers. You can't just take the weighted sum. And this is why. It's because we don't want individuals to drop the responsibility that they have as engineers. Now, of course, what Pugh immediately does in his own paper, which I'm not happy about, is this at the bottom. He doesn't sum them up and come up with an absolute sum. He simply says, Well, concept 5 has got 8 pluses and 1 minus, and concept, what's another plus? Actually, there aren't any other very many good ones. Um, he then kind of adds them up, so I think Pew kind of lost it here a little bit. But at least by not summing the pluses and minuses, less information has been lost. So if you say, let's see if we can annotate quickly. Here, you've lost some information. And the reason you've lost some information is because you can't necessarily tell. Well, here 11 and 12 are the same. I'm looking for a good example, and his paper doesn't really do it. He's aggregated these pluses, these two pluses are considered identically to these two pluses. So from the point of view of the bottom, you can't tell, are those like pluses the same as those pluses, because it's aggregated together. So he is aggregating. I'm not happy about this, but life goes on. Oh yeah, got to capture it for future. You should have noticed that we did post yesterday's captures. So when we go back to use as intended, use as desired, we're into an interesting situation here, because with respect to the Pew chart, it seems very clear that most of the world is using it as desired, which kind of pissed me off. So I went and tried to figure out why. So I went online and I go to Google and look up Pew chart, and it's very clear that everybody wants to, have net scores, have weights, they want mathematical certainty. And I'm sitting here going, but Pew said not to do that. So let's go check out Wikipedia. Because some of you have made comments saying, Wikipedia, a little dangerous, shouldn't always use it, and you're right. So we'll just zoom in. Whoa, come back. So on Wikipedia, it says, which are scored and summed to gain a total score. Great. And the reference is to Pew, which, as we now know, means they didn't read the paper because Pew said not to do it. Okay. Now, this is something I don't know how many of you have ever done. We're going to check out Wikipedia. Oh, sorry, one thing. I'm putting a value judgment here. I will own the value judgment. They were seduced by the dark side of the desire to step away from responsibility and said, if I use the tool the way I want to, then it's not my decision, it's the tool's decision. Whereas Pew's like, you can't do that. Let's go check Wikipedia. Let's go check behind the scenes of Wikipedia and look at the revisions. On the 3rd of June, 2006, a random user named Quarneri made this change. Added this. So some unknown individual put a single sentence in Wikipedia and basically changed how most people will understand the Pew chart, which now tells you, one, why you should always be skeptical of Wikipedia, two, why we teach you to do, or why we push you research, 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 and three, why you really do want to understand the tools you're using as they were designed, and it's an and how they're used in practice. Because if you become the person, which I sometimes am, who goes and says, you're using the tool wrong, your teammates might be like, I don't care what you think, we're using it in the way we think makes sense. Being able to balance as intended with as desired, depending on context and team, is critical. All right, so this is a Pew chart. This is a comparison matrix. You will note they're kind of similar. And why didn't we call them a Pew chart? And why did we say comparison matrix? We did so because we didn't want you to then, when you were working on your own and didn't remember what slide it was on, to go to Google, go to Wikipedia, where you would learn that you have to sum things up. So we've deliberately changed the language to comparison matrix from PewChart to avoid, or to help avoid, the temptation of adding up the numbers, taking away personal responsibility, and so as far as we're concerned, not practicing as an engineer. That was a hard transition. We have about 10 minutes. We're going to talk about models because we've used the term but never actually defined it. All right, so this is going to be speed run. Free associate, what's a model? I will watch our various chat sites. What's a model? Start typing. Models are, a model is, no looking it up, no cheating. Representation of a concept. Collection of structure, ooh, cool, structured thoughts. Take in inputs, get an output. Usually that we consider a function, not a model, but why not? Representation of the real world, okay. Real world could be a process. Okay, we've got the notion of theory now, theoretical representation of reality. And some of you are noticing by this that the lag between Mattermost and Twitch is between 3 and 5 seconds. Representing what's in your mind in a form other people can perceive. Getting it, yeah, I love the word representation, getting it out. The notion of simplified. Okay, we have experimental results, specific aspect. Awesome. You have free associated well. Love it. So here's the question. And I'm not quite sure how we're going to do this. So Professor Sheridan, let's put it just a couple numbers down, and then as students post, we'll add in alternatives. So if a student sort of says, hey, I think there's this many, we'll just add that in. So your question on this slide, how many models of resistor are on the screen right now? Professor Sheridan will start the poll, and we will add options to the poll as students put their answers out. Go. It's mostly a trap. If your number is already on the poll, please add to it. Otherwise, all right, can we add a 0? Thank you. Can we add 12, please? All right, 36, 37, we're getting there. Are they representations of resistors? 48. All right, let's call it. What if the photo itself? All right, we're going to call this and see what the class feels. Oh, here we go. You are collectively, wow, okay. That's kind of cool. So 3 is definitely doing well. 2 is doing well. Here we go. V equals IR, mathematical model in the form of a graph. The equation, R equals V over I. 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. the color bands. Let's see if I remember this. Brown, better be right or your great big venture goes wrong. So that's a model. And the word resistor is also a model because it is a representation of the physical thing or the thing known as, ooh, nice. Okay, I'm just gonna keep going. I've got to stop looking over there because it's too much fun. Okay, what other factors affect resistance? Watching the clock, I'll give it away. Temperature affects resistance. The actual amount of voltage or current affects resistance. Vibration affects resistance. Current vibration. Whether it's AC or DC affects resistance. Voltage versus current is also modeled. Yep, I think I got that one, I thought. Oh, voltage and current are also models. Resistance is a model. I love it. We're going to get there. So lots of factors affect resistance. Over what domain does it hold? You're going to start to have to say, and this is where assumptions are so critical. Assuming DC, assuming room temperature or approximately thereof, assuming voltages and currents of certain magnitudes, R equals V over I holds, which leads to model, which leads to scientific modeling, which is what you've been learning a lot of. And this is so critical. In class, I would usually say, what does this represent? Here, I'll simply say framing. Scientific modeling is an act of framing as well as understanding. Understand, operationalize, quantify, visualize, but note, operational to do this, math to do this, graphical to do this. It's like prototyping. It's no different than prototyping. A prototype is just another model. So the way we've kind of defined it, it's a purposeful simplification of something, and that something could be another model. So this is kind of the praxis definition of where we're going. So you got to have a purpose for it, much like your prototype. What is your prototype for? Ideally, it's for developing measurements. Again, rhetorical for time. You have done models of models. F equals ma is a model of F equals dp dt, which is a model of reality. It's a whole chain based on your levels of abstraction and the assumptions you make. So no, it's not mass times acceleration, it is the change in momentum. Also, this one I'm actually going to take the seconds to see what people post. Where have you seen this before? Oh yes. Oh yes, it's coming now. The language thingy. Communication. Okay, interesting. So all models are, yep. Reality is a model of our, yep. Or you've seen this one. Way back. So you've seen this in a number of different contexts. It's kind of cool. It's a really nice meta model. We're using it for design. I'm told that unfortunately when I was away, it was used in a communicative context, which is awesome that you guys caught that. But like, yeah, Hoover Dam, boom. So when we developed this model, we were actually basing it on this other model used in science. Keeping in mind, all models are wrong. PV equals nRT. You learned that one in high school. You know, it's great assuming a whole lot of stuff. Here's what we want you thinking. This is sort of the end game because we're almost at the end of class. We're not going to ask, is this prototype correct? Is this prototype truthful? We're going to say is Is it useful? And what is it you have purposely intended
It's
it to do?
14 hours.
You have made that prototype with a particular purpose in mind. We want to know what that purpose is. We want to know how it contributes to design activities. And we want to know, is it a useful prototype? And that useful prototype can be anything from a graph to an equation to a picture to a physical build. So models, prototypes, pew charts, always check Wikipedia. Thank you all for being here. Hopefully we can get above 60 people on the surveys next time. Please get back to us with your feedback. In studio, oh, let's just do the quick jump, last jump, boom, 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 boom. Add your studio teaching team to your Google folder. They want to talk to you this week to help prepare you for beta next week. Thank you all for being here.